All right, we are live for episode 2, Lost in the 80s. Today's episode is titled NES Now You Are Playing with Power. I am Brian here with co-host Rich, and Rich, give the audience a little taste of what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, we're going to touch on a lot of different points inside of the Nintendo system. When I think about video games, obviously the first thing that comes to my mind is Atari. That was, something that my uncle and dad, they were still young enough at the time that Atari was a big deal in my house. But we don't remember it really well, but they released great games like Pac-Man and Frogger and Pitfall. But then like later in Atari's history, they started to release a bunch of really poorly made, cheap games, like toy stores and department stores wanted to stop carrying video games. So, 1983 was a big video game crash. And then, in 1985, Japanese company, Nintendo, it was founded in 1889, making playing cards, launched a game system. They launched it in Japan. It was called Famicom in 1983. And in 85, it was released here in the US. And I think, as they say, the rest is history. The interesting part to me about that is originally stores did not want to carry Nintendo because they were worried about the Atari problem. And so Nintendo came with a Rob the Robot with it to like entice people to buy. I don't remember that. I didn't have a Rob the Robot. Mine came with Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt and the gun. But by 1986, 87, Nintendo was basically changing the way all of us, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds lived our lives. And so we're going to just jump into a lot of stuff about the individual games and kind of how Nintendo made us feel and the impact it had moving forward. But that transition from tanking Atari to rising Nintendo hit right when we were in our third, fourth, fifth grade years. So it was an incredible time to be alive.
Yeah, I got mine in 87. I don't know how they did the production, but mine just had Mario. I did not have Duck Hunt or the gun or the robot. Maybe they sold it at different times at different places or whatever, but yeah, I just had Mario. That was the first game, and that's just my, that's my memory with my first Nintendo was, playing that game and getting to the Bowser and then thinking like, oh wow, that was easy, and then oh yeah, I got another world,
Yeah, your
and then another
princess is
world,
in
and another world.
your
Yeah, there
princess
was a lot of
castle.
the imposters
Yeah.
as a princess. So, but yeah, it was fun. But yeah, we'll dig into that. Obviously, the Nintendo was a complete culture shift for not only I think not only kids but just adults, and just how they. It's almost like they got a built-in babysitter, or maybe that's kind of where all that started with the electronics and put them in a room or family room or downstairs or garage or something. All your buddies or your relatives or your friends in the neighborhood just kind of congregated to one place, and it was really cool also because I mean, obviously, I think you mentioned this the last episode, but if your parents in 1986 or 87 are spending $40 on a game, now that's like getting a pizza and some drinks, but that was a lot of money back then. So I think that the fact that like you wanted to know what games your friends had.
Yeah.
That way you didn't always buy the same ones. That way, hey, I'm going to go over here and play this, or okay, I'm going to this guy's house to play that or whatever. So having that option where you could still get all the playing time, not to mention the fact that they started renting them out as well. I'm assuming they did that in your area. They were pretty much in all the movie stores in my town, and I just have a little town with 4,000 or 5,000 people, and I think we had 3 places that rented Nintendo games.
Yeah, we
So
we had a few more than that, but full of pep rental on I think it was on College Avenue, maybe. That was the place where we went to renting games, and then yeah, trade. I lived in a neighborhood. It was probably 10 dudes in my neighborhood that were all within a grade or two of each other. And so, yeah, if I was going to buy Mega Man 2, then Scott Jackson or Randy Schoonover or Mike Waltz, those guys weren't going to buy Mega Man 2 because you could just pass it around. And so it was a big part of the cultural shift of before the Nintendo, we played a lot, and we still played baseball and basketball outside. I mean, that was still, you came home from school, you got to pick up basketball game. Scott had a asphalt basketball court in his backyard, And then I had a baseball field in my side yard. And so we still did a lot of that, but it did shift to where you came home from school and you were on a quest in Legend of Zelda, and everybody was going. I had another buddy who had an open basement, like you could walk in from outside, and he just had like couches and beanbag chairs and a pretty good sized TV and tons of games. So it was a great, I mean, again, a great time to be alive, but it did shift how you kind of your after school hours for sure.
Right. For sure. So here's what we're going to do. We have not officially looked at this yet and, dissected it from each other's list. So we're going to kind of get into that with each of our top tens. And we'll just kind of go game per game and talk about why certain ones are at certain spots and, why maybe some didn't make the list that made Rich's list or, and vice versa. So let's see here. Okay. We have one. That's funny. Contra is number 4 for each of us. Um, let's see. I think I was so pro Mario that I was not a big Mega Man fan. I know it was a crazy popular game. But I was just never big into Mega Man. Um, let's see. You have Zelda on there. I love the concept of Zelda. My problem with Zelda is my patience, or I should say lack of patience. Um, I just wanted to do something in the game. So like, just like wandering around looking for maps or potions or whatever,
Yeah,
to me, I thought was very dull.
Zelda for me is more of a nostalgia game because it was the neighborhood game. So that was the thing that like we were all actively participating because there was 8 or 10 of us trying to beat this game. And you're trading off and remembering stuff you did yesterday and things you found. So probably if I was sitting in my room playing a game by myself, Zelda would not have been a choice. Um, I mean, Punch Out was definitely, a more active game, Tecmo Bowl, those types of things. But Zelda for me was it's more nostalgia than probably how great the game was. So it made my list for that reason. Tecmo Bowl because I'm a football guy, and it was to me is the pinnacle of gaming experience at the time. But Punch
Yeah.
Out is right there too.
So go ahead.
Well, I would say we both have incredible games in the number one slot. Tecmo Bowl and Punch Out were both incredible games.
Yeah. The reason I had Tecmo Bowl lower is because how much I loved Tecmo Super Bowl or whatever. Maybe it was Super Tecmo Bowl. I think it
Yeah,
was Tecmo Super Bowl. But that game did not come out in the 80s. So that's why I did not list it on here. And that's why I have the original Tugmo Bowl lower. Because the second one you had all the teams. I think this one only had, was it 14? 14 or 16
yeah.
teams?
I always just play with the Bears, because they had
Yeah,
the
and they
one.
didn't have, it just, to me, the plays were limited. I mean, I love the game, of course, but I
Yeah,
think my love for the next one kind of took away my love for the first one.
so on
Um,
your list, you've got California games. I have to admit that I have never played California games. I don't
that
even.
was a game that always remember playing it with my brother Brad, and they were funny games. They weren't like, like there was like a BMX course. This game probably came out in 87, 88 maybe. But there was like a BMX dirt bike course. There was like a frisbee course where you basically just tried to throw the frisbee as far as you could and it would like, show your distance. It had a hacky sack. Yeah, I just remember the music and like the colors from it.
Yeah,
The hacky sack game, you basically just see how long you can keep the hacky sack going in a certain amount of time, like how many hits you get, whether it's on your knee or your head or something like that. You could do like spins and stuff. It's just for me, it was a very nostalgic game. I just remember playing it. I never owned it, but we rented it a lot. I don't know anybody else I don't know anyone that actually owned that game, but it has a special place for me renting it and playing it quite a bit.
yeah. And one thing I think we should mention for all of the maybe some younger people will hear this at some point and look some of these games up, and you wonder how could anybody play this game. Like if you look at Double Dribble, for instance, we'll use that as an example. The graphics in Double Dribble are just terrible. I mean, they're the worst, but we didn't know that at the time, right? Like I had something called the Bentley CompuVision that had Pong on it, where you just hit the ball back and forth between two paddles.
Right.
Then we went to Pitfall and Frogger, where it was, I don't know what the resolution was on that, but so these 8-bit games that were coming out with Nintendo, to us, were blowing our minds. I mean, so that should you should take that into context if you're looking any of these up and going, like, how could you possibly, like, I can't even understand the words on Double Dribble. When they
Well,
call a foul, you don't know what they're
right, so
calling.
off.
Yeah.
But if you remember the breakaway screen though, when you would dunk,
Yes.
it would, like, take up the whole screen and actually look like
A real
almost like a black
basketball.
and white image.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that was just the coolest thing ever, especially, like, when you weren't ready for it, and they
Yeah,
did
and
that. That was pretty amazing.
R
Um,
RBI baseball had, like, the same 4 body types of every player, and you could tell, like, their skill set and, what they were good at just based on body type, and there was
yeah,
no, like.
there were some you could hit a ball to shortstop and you were gonna be safe because
Yeah,
they were fast enough. And it was always funny because, like, even, like, no matter who you were, when you tried to throw a guy out at second, it bounced almost every single time. Like, the ball never made it, to second base without hitting the dirt, which I thought that was a really funny, just a funny thing for them to put in the game. Like, major league players can't get the ball from catcher, to second base without hitting the dirt.
yeah, and then
Uh,
and Punch-Out, I think we have to spend some time just because not only was it an iconic figure, Mike Tyson was, in that time. It's hard to explain to people younger than us how popular somebody like Michael Jordan or Mike Tyson was because we didn't have the internet. And so not everybody was popular. Now you can have some YouTuber, who nobody's ever heard of, and 10 minutes later they've got, loads of followers, and my kids will mention people's names. I'm like, well, what are they famous for? And they're like, well, they're not famous for anything. They're just famous. And so now everybody's famous. But back then, when you had superstars, like they were like when people saw Michael Jackson in public, they would faint. That's, like that type of superstar stuff was happening then. So Mike Tyson was like larger than life in a lot of different ways. And so when that game came out, to me, that was kind of the height of the Nintendo craze, was when Punch-Out was really popular.
yeah, I thought Punch Out was great. The characters, the way they made them, it was the first game that felt like, almost like a real life cartoon character. Like, they were so big and colorful. Um, the detail, with the muscles and the shoes and the shorts and hair, everything. Like, picture Piston Honda when he'd make his eyebrows raise.
Yeah, right.
Great Tiger spinning around.
Soda
Um,
Popinski flexing his
I mean, there's
pecs.
just, yeah, there's so many just great characters. I mean, Glass Joe comes in and his record is his record 0 and either
Oh, and
0 and 99 or 1 and 99. I think it's 0 and 99.
yeah, it is. It's 0 and 99. Don
Um,
Flamenco with the flower in his mouth and Bald Bull, they're all so unique. And I think that was the first, like when you're in Contra or Mario or any of these Mega Man, the enemy, the guy you're fighting against, they're all very nondescript, very similar. Like you're
mhm.
just shooting the same thing over and over and over again. In Punch Out, you're talking to your buddies the next day, like, well, I finally got past Bald Bull when he did his charge or
Full
whatever.
charge.
Yeah. So, you got the Super Macho Man and he does the big, roundabout punches where he's just spinning at the waist like he's on a swivel. So that there were all these unique things that weren't happening in the previous fighter that I thought made it way different.
Right, for sure. The one thing I mean, if I could have a complaint, the, I don't know why they couldn't just come up with additional characters. You have to fight Piston Honda twice, you fight Bald Bull twice, you fight Don Flamenco twice. Um, that was always odd to me, why they just like, why not just have another, a different character instead of just making this one, a little bit more difficult. But oh well, it is what it is.
And
I
they
think
did use
everyone's
the same body type, a handful, like Soda Popinski and Super Macho Man were the same body, just they changed the coloration a little bit. And
right.
I'm pretty sure Piston Honda, wasn't he the same body as Tyson? Like I think it was.
I would say you're probably, yeah, he probably very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Tyson was definitely big. Um, Now the question is, do you still remember the code to get to Tyson?
So I don't. I did not. I don't think I ever knew that. I mean, obviously I remember the Contra code, and we all. I mean, everybody used that, but I don't remember the code to get to Tyson. Tell it to us.
I'm almost positive it's 007-373-5963. I'm sure it's on the internet. I did not look that up. That's just my terrible nerd knowledge. Or actually, maybe it's very good nerd knowledge if I'm right.
Yeah. No,
It's
it's
either 007 or 070. I think it's 007-373-5963. I'm almost positive that's right. I wouldn't bet on it, but I am pretty certain.
nice. No, I didn't have the code to go straight to Tyson, and I will have to admit that I could very easily cycle through every boxer. I never beat Tyson. Never. No.
That surprises me.
I
What?
for some reason, whether it was a mental block or just dexterity wasn't there, whatever, I don't know, but I could never beat Tyson.
I thought Super Macho Man was tougher than Tyson,
Well,
personally.
after you got past the big punches at the beginning, I think Super Macho Man was easier. Tyson, you had those jabs at the beginning, but after you got past those, he was still harder. He was still hard to beat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do that to me. So switching gears a little bit, since you don't have Mega Man or Mega Man 2 on your list, Mega Man 2 to me was the smoothest gameplay, best like from just a game standpoint, and not the fact that I loved football or I loved Mike Tyson in a very as looked up to him as a sports figure or whatever, not all the other stuff that went with him. He also wasn't crazy then. I think we should point that out. Like there was no face tattoo, there was no eating your kids or whatever. Like if you watch old fights of Tyson, as soon as he knocked somebody out, he immediately like ran over to him and helped him up, gave him
Mhm.
hugs and told him good job. He was a couple too many hits to the head maybe in his life, but Mega Man 2 to me was the best like overall gameplay experience. I probably played more hours on Mega Man 2 than any game on my list.
Yeah, it's, I know it's always a highly rated game. So you've got, and I know Mario 3. Mario 3 is amazing too. I just stuck with one per franchise. That's why I didn't have 3. I think 3 is obviously the more enjoyable game. I think from a memory, nostalgia standpoint, I couldn't put that over Mario Brothers as a, 8 or 9-year-old kid. Whatever game I would have played first, that would have been, that was going to be higher than a sequel just because, where I was in life at that point. Um, yeah, nothing was gonna, no sequel was gonna top the original. Um, Blades of Steel. Do you remember that game?
This is a hockey game, right? I definitely played it some. I got to. I mean, this is not really an interesting story, but this is what we're doing, telling stories about Nintendo. So my grandmother owned a daycare, and she had like 2 or 3 small TVs set up with 2 or 3 Nintendos. After I would go over there because she was my grandma and my mom worked. Some days I'd go home, some days I'd stay at her house because she would feed me. As that was a big part of my afternoon was getting a snack from my grandma. But she would buy games, and she didn't care what the content of the game was. Right? She just was trying to have something there for the kids to do. So whatever game was in like KB Toys bargain bin or Kmart, that's what she was going to buy. So she had Blades of Steel and Double Dribble because they probably at some point were passed up by some other similar game. So
Mhm.
that's where I played those. But if I had the choice between, I had 2 sports games there, Blades of Steel and Double Dribble. So I was playing Double Dribble every time. I mean, a Southern
Yeah,
Indiana kid is going to play a basketball game the majority.
I remember we got that game after a Wednesday night church service. We went to Walmart. I know it was nearing Christmas, so my birthday was in December. I shouldn't say was; it still is in December.
Yeah, it's always been
Yeah.
them.
Always, all my life. But we went there after church, and you remember the Walmart like glass case, like behind the counter. They had like the electronic section, and you could just see all those titles, uh, right out there for you to view. And the Blades of Steel cover, they didn't use it wasn't real teams. It was just, I think it was just locations, Boston, New York, whatever. But remember they showed like 2 people were like fighting, because hockey's always known for fights. And I remember looking at the back of it, and it showed him like literally like like one on one, like you could like literally get into fights, and you're just sitting there pressing A and B as fast as you can.
Yeah, right.
But they legitimately had fights on it. So I thought that was just so much fun when you're playing with your buddy. And there's really no rhyme or reason to why, one guy wins over the other, but um, you know, those were always that was just always fun. That was probably more fun than the actual game. I don't know much about hockey still today, but I will never forget, playing that game.
As we got older and switched to Sega Genesis and some of those other things, HLPA was a hockey game that the graphics were much better on. And you could check people really hard in that game. So me and a couple buddies started playing NHLPA. That was several, 94, 95, somewhere in that area. We got Blades of Steel was never really in my rotation. If I was going to play a game, it was usually just going to be Tecmo Bowl, one of the Mega Mans or Punch Out. Um, I included Mario Brothers at 3 because the same reason. Like when I opened this on Christmas, hooked it up, I did have the duck hunt gun in the game, and my dad probably played that a little more than I did. But putting Mario Brothers in for the first time and playing it is pretty hard to describe, I think, to somebody who's grown up with a video game console in their pocket. Like there's
Mhm.
no way that kids today or even 20 somethings can really have the feeling of opening up Super Mario Brothers, your Nintendo with Super Mario Brothers. Just I don't really even know how to describe the euphoria was unbelievable. My my
Yeah,
my number one favorite Christmas gift as a kid all time. Um, top three, I got a really cool silver bike, and then I remember when I got the extra large Megatron from Transformers, but Nintendo beat both of those.
yeah. I have an original Nintendo in my garage, and I still have a box sitting on one of my shelves, an original Nintendo box, and every time I see it, it's just it's a good memory. Um, so the last one I have on here that you don't have is golf. Golf was it was a goofy game. It was the same course every time. The only thing that ever changed was like the wind direction. You play it one time and you got 16-mile-an-hour wind with you. The next time it may be 13 mile an hour going to the west. That was really the only difference. But that was a game that I liked, and I didn't play it a lot, but I actually play it more as an adult with my buddy Kyle. Now we play a lot during the winter, but it was a game you could play if you were alone, just to beat your record. I mean, that's kind of what golf is all about, just beating your previous,
Yeah, right.
best score. So that's why I liked it. I mean, it was literally about the easiest game you could possibly learn to play. Use your arrow. Oh, I'm going to hit it this way, and then a, boom, and you make your swing, and that's it. Um, you know, Picking your club and all that. You learn that as you go. But yeah, like I said, it was just kind of a competition against yourself. That was the main reason I liked it.
Yeah, I played same thing. I played the golf game some. Is just if you had the option to play Tecmo Bowl or I didn't. I wasn't a kid of variety. I'm still not a variety person. Like I could literally eat the same lunch every day, and it wouldn't. I could eat Chick-fil-A 300. Well, not on Sundays. So 300 and 11 times a year or whatever that comes out to be totally fine. So I just never got into golf. But you mentioned like there's no diversity inside the game. Again, people have to realize like we didn't know there was supposed to be because these were the first things that were ever coming out like this. So when
Right,
you saw a virtual golf course that you could play with a D-pad controller, you're like, this is incredible. Like this is incredible. So I don't think that people will take that into account enough is that, yeah, some of these games like golf seem very basic, but they were still so much better than anything we'd ever seen at the time. So it was life-changing stuff.
right. Yeah, really was. One last thing, and I'm gonna just kind of put you on the spot because you didn't know I was going to ask this. If you had to pick a runner up for one that honorable mention just outside the top 10, while you're thinking of it, I'll go ahead and give you mine. Mine would be Double Dragon. When my dad had a baseball card shop in the late 80s, we had a Double Dragon and a Galaga and I think a Miss Pac-Man arcade. And the Double Dragon arcade game is my favorite arcade game of all time. Uh, when Nintendo released Double Dragon, I was so excited. I remember I got it for Christmas and I knew I was going to get it. And I begged and begged and begged my mom to let me open it on Christmas Eve. And she did. My mom will probably watch this at some point and she will hopefully remember that memory. But I remember it was fun, but I was disappointed. That's why it's not on my top 10 because it was so much different than the arcade game. The movement, just you only had so many. I think there was 4 buttons on the arcade. There's only 2, obviously, um, on the Nintendo, and the joystick. Remember the arcade had the joystick where you
Right.
can kinda circle around more and not just have such stiff movements. Um, that was an important part of the arcade game, when you're fighting an opponent on the street. And you couldn't do that in the Nintendo game, so that's why I didn't make my top 10, but I still really, really enjoyed the game.
Yeah, so I have an easy pick for that. It actually was almost on my should have been on my top 10 list, but I felt like if I put it on there, everybody would be like, "You're an idiot. That game shouldn't be on your top 10 list." But it's a game nobody's ever played, probably but me, but it's called Joust. You rode like
I've heard
these
of it.
big yeah, you rode these big ostriches or something, and you had to like you had a jousting pole in your hand, and you had to get higher than your opponent. And if you did, when you hit them, they would like drop a little egg, and you'd have to collect that egg and move from screen to screen. And if you stayed in the screen too long, like some pterodactyls would come and rip you apart. It was again not a super fun game. It's on no one's top 10 list, but it was the first game when my grandma got the Nintendos that she bought, and she may have found it at a yard sale, she might have found it in the $5 bin at Kmart on a blue light special, which nobody, lots of people listening to this don't know what a blue light special is, but, uh, yeah, so I don't know how she got it or why, but it was the first one, and so going to my grandma's house at 10 years old or 9 years old or whatever, like, that was the game I went and played. Um, and so I found it enjoyable, but also kind of the nostalgia part of it, similar to what you're talking about. But yeah, it's not a game that anybody else would put on their list, but I loved it for those reasons.
Right. Well, we'll kinda close out maybe just with a couple of, just memories about, what the Nintendo was about. I mean, to me, from a summertime perspective, there wasn't much better than having a little league game on a summer night, and then you rent a Nintendo game, you get a pizza, maybe rent a movie as well, but you're up till 3 or 4 a.m. playing a game with a couple buddies that you hadn't played before. But those were good times. I always enjoyed playing games around around the holiday season, Christmas time. You're home for a couple weeks. More than likely, you got a game or two that you could uh, share with others and hopefully learn how to play it. So those are really good memories. And of course, coming home right after school, if you didn't have practice or something like that, you were playing Nintendo basically from 87 till about 90, I would say. Then 91, I think, is when Super Nintendo
Super
came on.
Nintendo.
Maybe 91 or 92, but yeah, Nintendo was basically right in the middle of our developing years as being social with other kids.
Yeah, the thing I remember the most, and this is a theme that people will find as they listen to these episodes, over time. Hopefully, lots of people listen for a long, and that reminds us to say, subscribe and click the bell, so you can get notified when a new episode comes out. But I remember like on the playground, like you got a new game just released or came out, or yeah, somebody just learned the cheat code for Contra, or somebody finally just beat, King Hippo on Punch Out or whatever. But there was always that kind of sense of community around it. I do think that's why some games today are still like Clash of Clans or Clash Royale. Those are games you play on your phone, but you do it in a group. Like you get these big groups together. I think that's why they're could be why they're popular, and that was a big deal to me as a kid. Like six of your buddies sitting around the lunch table talking about, how you strategize to get to the next level on Mega Man or whatever. But the kind of the community surrounding a lot of these things we're going to talk about in the 80s, the community around card trading, the community around Nintendo games, like all of those things were a big part of who we were as kids. Like that's how you built friendships. We didn't text, we didn't have social media. We ate weird rectangular pizza that had funny looking holes punched in the bottom at our school cafeteria, which that was good.
It
I don't,
was.
I don't care what it looked like or what it was made of. It was good. But you would sit around that and try to trade, a rated rookie card for a different one. And then you would talk about, the level on Legend of Zelda. That those memories, I think, as we're saying this, there's going to be guys listening to this going like, I remember doing that exact thing. The summertime baseball game, pizza, rent a movie, rent a game. The lunchtime, again, pizza somehow is involved. trade baseball cards and talk about video games was just that was who we were in the 80s. So that's what Nintendo, aside from just the games and the rankings and everything, that's kind of what it meant to me was you and your buddies getting together and trying to figure this out and exclude the girls from this, right? Because they weren't involved. So, and at the time you were still hoping that that was how it was going to stay, that they were never going to be, it changed, over the next 3 or 4 years after that. But, it was a pretty great time.
Yep, it really was. Well, yeah, hopefully, you guys enjoyed this. I hope, you're looking at these lists and you're thinking, maybe where you would put number one or what game you would have at number one and things like that. Hopefully you can, reminisce with some friends of yours and heck, maybe even, see if your mom still has it in her garage or basement or attic or something and dust it off. Oh, remember blowing in the cartridge? You take it, you
Absolutely.
make
That
sure it,
is,
make
pr-
sure.
yeah, probably the most remembered thing. If you were to quiz the whole population on Nintendo, is like my 90-year-old grandmother would still tell you, like, kids would be like, Philly, this game's not working. And she would run over and, take it out and blow in the cartridge and put it back in. Yeah, just stuff like that that sticks with you forever. And in the comments, you could put your top 10 list or games we missed. I'm sure there are some. It's not a comprehensive list, just what we liked. Or maybe even a thought for an episode like this that we can do about other stuff in the 80s. If you leave that stuff for us, we'd love to dive into it.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for watching, everyone. Rich, good to be with you as always,
Yes, sir. We'll
and
talk to you soon.
we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.